Hello again, creatures of the night, and welcome back to Screaming for Horror. As always, I'm Rain. How are ya? As the hot and sizzling summer ends and fall starts to approach, you and your buddies might want to wind down with a well-deserved and peaceful fishing trip. Or maybe not. The next accounts occurred while people were out fishing on their favorite or random spots. The stories told by real-life anglers who caught more than just fish also caught a nice batch of frights. These are Fisherman and their ghostly watery stories. Let's begin. Number 1. My cousin and I were fishing late at night. We decided to go around 9 p.m. since that's when it's the best time for us to get a bite. We got to our spot and there was nothing but the two of us, the lake, and some random animal sound which we were used to. About 30 minutes into our peaceful night of fishing, suddenly things went quiet. And pretty much if you ever gone to our spot, that does not happen. We didn't say anything, and we kept on with our night. Suddenly, there's loud screaming coming behind us. I turned to look at my cousin, and by this time, his face was pale. I asked him at the same time, "Did you hear that?" "Yes, I did." "What was it?" "I don't know. I've never heard that before." As much as we both tried to ignore it, we kept alert. But then it passed, and since we were doing some catching up, about an hour or so later, we had forgotten about the incident. We didn't catch much, so we decided to pack up and call it a night. When we were headed back to our truck, we started hearing rustling leaves behind us. We turned around, thinking it was an animal, but nothing was there. We kept on, and right as we were about to hop in our truck, a woman appeared right in front of us, just a few feet away. She looked dirty and a little beat up, with some blood stains on what seems to be a nightgown of some sort. We shouted, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" She keeps on looking at us, and then nothing came out of her mouth but the sound of a shrieking scream, the same one that we had heard. My cousin and I were petrified, and we got into our car and drove off. We haven't gone to our spot ever since. We have never told anyone about what happened, but I can still hear her from time to time. Number 2. My buddies from the war and I go about twice a year on a weekend-long fishing trip. We catch up with life, rent a cabin, the usual. But this year, it happened to be that one of my buddies was sick, so when I told my other friend about it, he told me that his cousin was in town and if I didn't mind him coming along with us, which I said no, so we took off to our spot. Once we got there, it was late in the afternoon, but we had enough time to set up our gear and head down to the boondocks. Among some of the things we take with us, there's a weather/emergency radio, just in case. We set it up on any FM frequency and chill out until we catch something. Between us talking and getting to know more about my friend's cousin, the radio started to make some crackling sound, which had never made that before. So the radio mysteriously went from FM to AM, which I thought it was weird since it had a little button on the side that you needed to press in order to change it. We called it a night, and my friend's cousin looked distracted. He kept looking at the lake and smiling, but there was also a hint of fear in his eyes. When we got to the cabin, we headed towards the kitchen because we heard a loud noise. All the dishes had been thrown to the floor, and my radio was still making the same strange sound. My buddy's cousin comes up to me and tells me, "Don't worry, it's the spirit of the man who lives here. He just doesn't like you guys coming here." I looked at him puzzled, and my friend later explained to me that he's a medium. I'm not much of a believer, but now things have changed. Number 3. Back in the colonial days, there were people called wreckers. They would stand on beaches with lanterns and trick ships into running aground, and they loot the ship and kill anyone who survived on the beach. Then, they would drag their bodies back to the water to make it look like a normal shipwreck. One night, on East Beach in Rhode Island, I was fishing with my father, and as we got down to the beach, we saw some odd drag marks in the sand. About a half hour of casting, we made our way back to the truck. As soon as we get to the parking lot, our German Shepherd started acting weird. We were loading up the truck with our gear when we saw a light coming out of the dunes. As we got a good look, we saw it was an old 17th or 18th century lantern. We then saw 2 more lights and 4 people walked out wearing colonial clothes. At that point, we just threw everything in the truck. picked up our barking dog, and blasted out of there. Number 4. Once I did have a ghostly experience, and that was when I was fishing at a lake in France. I had been there for a couple of days, and my time was nice and peaceful. There was an old chateau nearby riddled with bullet holes from the Second World War. Anyways, this lake is on a French army training area, so it was pretty secluded. During the late afternoons, I had the feeling of being watched from the woods at the far end of the lake. Each day, at the same time, the feeling would return, usually around dusk, and from different areas, as if whatever it was getting closer to me. I remember waking on the last night of my trip outside of my sleeping bag. It was very foggy, and I could hardly see the dim glow of my bite alarms. I decided to make a brew, and as I flicked on the lighter, the sparks silhouetted the face of a helmeted German soldier peering into my sleeping from the darkness outside. The next morning, I packed up and went home, but not before speaking to an old French state warden who told me that the chateau had seen some fierce fighting when the Americans liberated the area of France. The Germans had fled into the woods, only to be ambushed by a patrol in reserve. They were all killed and buried around the lake. I don't think I will be fishing there anytime soon. Number 5. My buddy and I were fishing at a certain fort in Jamestown, Rhode Island. At one point, my buddy decided to walk to the boat dock, about 50 yards away. The whole walk there, he said he sensed someone behind him and even heard footsteps. He thought I was walking behind him, but when he turned around, he was alone. He said it creeped him out pretty bad, and he never went back to that spot with me. Now, flash forward to the next summer. I decided to fish on the spot by myself. I had completely forgotten about my friend's experience, so I got to the dock, unloaded everything, and started to soak some bait. It was a clear, moonless night with no wind or breeze at all. About a half hour into watching my rod, I started to smell perfume around me. I thought it was pretty weird since I was the only one there. The smell kept getting stronger and stronger, so I walked about 10 feet to my right and the smell disappeared. I walked back to my original spot and the perfume smell was still there, stronger than ever. It was strong to the point that my nose started to burn. At that point, I said, "Where the hell is the smell coming from?" Soon after I said that, the smell disappeared. That's when I packed up and left, and I've never been back to that spot. Well guys, we've reached the end of our video, but remember, stay tuned because rage is almost here. If you have a ghostly experience, a close encounter, or want to share any photos or videos of strange phenomena, feel free to send us an email to screamingforhorror@gmail.com and your story could be featured in one of our future videos. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Subscribe and follow us on our Facebook page for more. And remember, until next time, sweet screams.